Hi listeners and welcome to the latest Footnote episode of the Fantasy Animation Podcast with me, Chris Holliday.
And me, Alex Sargent.
We are doing a kind of magic.
Yeah, not just a kind of magic, all the magic.
All the magic.
Yeah.
Now, again, there are terms that I think float between fantasy and animation, as is the nature with the Footnote episodes. Magic, animation as an illusion, staged magic, so forth. But it obviously holds a particular purchase within, I guess, discourses of fantasy. If we think about wonder and imagination and the marvelous and the uncanny and all these kind of terms that we discuss or that you mention when we talk about fantasy. So magic, I will set the timer. I also don't know, and this is true of all the episodes, we maybe have a rough idea of where they're going to go. I don't know where this episode is going to go because I don't know anything about magic.
Let's find out.
So over to you.
Okay, so I think we're going to have quite a similar conversation that we had on our Footnote on wonder in this episode. So magic means lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different things, and there's probably no one definition of it. I think the tension we have to unpack and explore, and it's not necessarily a tension people acknowledge when they use the term in fantasy studies, is do we mean magic in the sense of, I guess there are three types of magic we could play with. Very loosely. There is magic to describe all kinds of thinking that require a non-empirical, non-scientific worldview.
Yep.
So we might talk about the magic embedded within religious thinking, or the magic embedded within folkloric practice, or indeed the magic embedded with thinking that if I wear these socks tomorrow, Portsmouth Football Club might win the match, right?
Yeah.
So all that
no socks are that powerful.
All kinds of things like that.
Yes.
We could talk about the magic of a magic show. So the magician revealing the rabbit in the hat, which infers a kind of knowingness that the magic isn't real.
Yeah. But persuasive nonetheless, and you're buying into it, kind of thing.
Well, I don't like these words, but I don't think you do buy into it. I think you're enjoying the illusion. I think maybe illusion is the right word for that, right?
Okay.
You don't actually think the rabbit came out of the hat, but you do appreciate that that's what it looked like, and there's a skill in the illusionary power,
sleight-of-hand,
which we can relate to special effects and reception,
and
kind of stuff, and people do.
I was just thinking that,
which is quite a rationalistic kind of pursuit of magic, in that the magic is in the how was it done rather than what just happened.
But crucially that something was like done in a way that is understandable. I just can't see it, or I don't know it at first glance. Okay.
And then there's a kind of murky middle world, which I think most fantasy theory interweaves within, which is, and the way I probably use it in my work, which is this idea that a magic that is neither purely to be believed in the case of the magic of religion, right? And I don't mean to try and be, I'm trying to be respectful because I think it is important, but there's a difference between believing in a supernatural being that has power over one's life and sincerely believing in that, and the magic of a magic show. And it's in that kind of chasm between the two that I think a lot of fantasy reception and theory lies. So I'll say that for now, I think, but poke at that a bit if you want.
No. Okay, yeah. So these three, and have you encountered those three categories in relation to histories of fantasy cinema as a way to then locate the what fantasy as a genre, as an impulse, whatever, as a type of movie, as a set of features, whatever, however we want to interpret that, intervenes into? So these three treatments of magic.
Sort of. I guess I'm really saying there are two like big ones, and then there's a kind of murky world in between the two. So magic is a word quite often used to denote what fantasy is, as opposed to science fiction and horror. So much like wonder, it's kind of almost synonymous with wonder.
Okay.
Alec Worley, in his book Empires of the Imagination, which is about fantasy filmmaking, says magic is the key word in the definition of fantasy. A fantasy film may take in a magical world like Oz, or it may involve magical characters like a flying nanny, but magic fuels fantasy. Okay, so what does he mean by that? Then other people use this term. I think it's something to do with the fact that I think this is a kind of post Judeo-Christian, Islamic, Abrahamic kind of religions world, whereby magic is both permitted and unpermitted in the worldview of kind of medieval, early modern Europe, right? So magic is something that isn't belonging to spirituality and religion, because that isn't magic, right? But it also...
Is that because it's not deceptive?
Yes, magic takes on a kind of... at least the way it's talked about in sort of theological texts, is a deceptive, superstitious quality, right? Okay. There's superstition, and there's naive superstition, and then there's belief in the theological kind of substance of a particular religion, right? And in sort of Roman ancient... Well, that's not really a distinction that's needs to be made. So there's something about that, and I think Daniel O'Keefe gets quite close to this, where he talks about magic as a kind of social action designed not necessarily to do anything, but to invoke feeling in its participants. So he's sort of talking about the kind of the Bactinian carnivalesque folklores. When these kind of practices are being done, they're not being done with a genuine belief that these things will uproot the kind of power structures and the laws of the land, but they're done because the feeling of release from those structures is still worth having, even if the belief is not.
Yeah, okay, so there's a kind of cathartic... Yeah, a kind of moment of release.
And I think that's where I think magic is probably worth thinking about in terms of fantasy. Okay, so it's not about suddenly believing in the spectacle of a magic. Oh, that's really a magic carpet, and it's not about just going, oh, I wonder how that was made. It's about choosing feeling over choosing rationality.
So why does fantasy cinema? Why is magic a word or part? If Worley's saying that it fuels fantasy cinema, why is magic such a? Because it's a word that it doesn't fit with the mode of comedy or the action adventure film but it's somehow the magic of fantasy invokes a particular kind of set of expectations that kind of pivot or hinge on an understanding that what I will get is some kind of magical experience beyond the fact that all cinema is a kind of magic experience of illusion and so forth. What is it about fantasy cinema and the way that you've written about it and understood it that seems conducive to magic being part of its language?
Sure. So I think it's that sense of the feeling. So it's a way to articulate the strangeness of the aesthetic of fantasy, because again, to kind of bring it back to the fantastic, all films that deliberately subvert the laws of reality. So the first thing you have to kind of get your head around to understand this feeling is that these are not films that are claiming any kind of tangible link to the real. These are films that are claiming as part of their existence to break from the real. Okay, that is the cinema of the fantastic, and I think that's really important. I know I bang on about this all the time, but so that's important. It's different from historical fiction. It's different from realistic fiction. It's different from all fiction is fictional. All fiction is but fantastical stories declare and make their fictionality overt. That's part of the contract you're signing up to. Ghosts don't exist. Stories about ghosts are about things that don't exist.
Yeah, but in this type of fiction, they do, because we're declaring it as a...
They exist within the context of the story. But part of the pleasure you're getting from this exchange is that you're about to read a story about a thing you know doesn't exist.
So this, a lot of when you're talking about the fantastic, and we've done this on the podcast, and you've talked about hesitation and kind of wavering, does it relate quite closely to that kind of experience? So kind of, if your work is about a spectatorship of fantasy, you're trying to engage with how the spectator wavers and hesitates, and part of that is about their complex relationship to registers of magic as well.
Yeah, well, yes, because so the fantastic hits you with this assault of ontology. It says, here is a thing that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You can then experience that in various different ways. You can be horrified and find that a scary intrusion, and there we trip into the realm of horror.
Yep.
You can find it. You can try to rationalize it.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. That thing doesn't exist, but and now they made that, and now you've rationalized the experience.
Is that the mark?
Well, that's what. Yeah, that was what. This is Todorov, but like that's what Todorov would kind of go down that well. But we could talk about it in terms of we're now talking about science fiction, or we're talking about special effects reception, or this attempt to rationalize the rupture.
Yep.
Or you can enjoy it even though you know it's not real. You can find pleasure in it. You can be reassured by it. You can be reassured by the feeling of wonder, by the feeling of magic. And I think that's what this is trying to get at. Magical practice is a feeling, it's a choosing of feeling over rationality.
Right, okay, okay. Great.
It doesn't matter that I don't believe that. So we go back to the rabbit in the hat thing. Yeah, you can worry about how the magician did it, but actually that's not what a lot of people do when they watch a magic show. They don't go out and go, should we have until I find out how that is made, I'll never be satisfied. What you do is you go, I know that didn't actually happen, but it felt cool. And actually in this space and in this cultural feeling, that feeling cool is more important to me than
rationalising
how it happened.
Okay. We've got 10 seconds left.
God.
You've done Alec Worley.
Yeah.
Any other bits? We can probably permit you, 5% tolerance either way, so you've got a bit of extra time. Anything on fantasy and magic?
Alec Worley's Empires of the Imagination. John Grant has an entry on magic in the Encyclopedia of Fantasy, and often cited on this text, where he examines the magic and spells. Daniel O'Keefe's Stolen Lightning, the social theory of magic, is really, really important. And I think Catherine Folks also mentions the word magic in her definition. Okay. I talk about it a little bit, but I kind of try to not use the word.
Yeah, we won't be putting you in.
No, okay, fine.
So there we go. Great, wonderful.
Magical.
Yeah, magical indeed. A kind of magic well done.
If you have suggestions for future Footnote episodes, you can email us at fananimresearch, FANANIM research@gmail.com. You can also follow us, use that same handle to follow us on various social media platforms, and you can find us at fancy-animation.org. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.
Bye.